Starfield is a gigantic game. There are a ton of systems here and a ton of smaller things that I honestly didn't notice until I had about 20 to 30 hours in the game, including one feature that I discovered and was a complete game changer. In this video, I'm going to share with you a bunch of incredibly handy day one tips or even some hidden features that I think you're going to be taking advantage of across your playthrough. There's going to be no spoilers in this one, and I think particularly if you're somebody who has played past Bethesda games, you will almost certainly be making some mistakes early in Starfield. But my biggest tip of all is make sure you're eating. You're probably about to play an ungodly amount of Starfield over the next couple of weeks, so let's make sure you don't have to worry about food also. That with today's video sponsor, Factor, and even get you 50% off. With Factor, you'll get a giant box of meals like this delivered right to your front door. These meals are never frozen and literally ready in 2 minutes or less. That's like 1.5 load screens, and all you need is a microwave. This completely takes the stress out of eating. Just open your fridge and you'll find tons of meal options for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and there are even 34 meal options each week, so you'll never get bored. But you're a gamer, so maybe even that is too much work for you. Thankfully, Factor also has some absolutely incredible add-on options like smoothies or even keto shakes. During busy weeks, I basically live off these things, and you can be too. But since you watched this video, I got an even better deal for you. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGJUICE, OG50 for 50% off your first box. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. But honestly, one of the biggest early game tips is just the help menu. I'm not even sure the game ever explicitly tells you about this, but as you pause the game, there is an entire help menu with a database of tips and how-tos within it. In Starfield, you actually need this, as lots of the systems in this game get really complex. So as you go into something like outpost building, read some of these entries first, as I think it'll definitely save you a headache. Something that's almost certainly going to have a learning curve for old Bethesda players is that scrapping items and really junk is completely changed in Starfield. Junk isn't really a core component of the game anymore. Instead, now there's going to be resources as well as manufactured components. Resources are normally pretty obvious because a lot of times these are literal ores, but also sometimes other things like adhesive or other liquids. And manufactured components are going to be a little bit more confusing, but oftentimes a manufactured component will be listed as such in the description. These are the only two categories of resources that you actually care about. Starfield also has junk, and I think Fallout 4 players especially are going to have a hard time with this. Like this microscope or even this roll of tape. Despite what your instincts are telling you, in Starfield these are genuinely useless. They have no purpose and no functionality outside of whatever costs they have associated with them to sell. And if you just want an easy way to keep track of this, usable resources will always be placed in your resource category, while junk is going to be in miscellaneous and can just be dropped without much concern. But one of the other things I wish I knew in the early stages of the game is Starfield has a huge amount of inflation. Early in my first playthrough, I was just looting everything that looked like it was worth a couple hundred credits, because in past games, a couple hundred credits is a good amount of money. In Starfield, it really isn't. Most things in this game are going to cost in the thousands or even certain things in the tens of thousands of credits. So if you see something that's worth 150 or even 200 credits a pop, I really wouldn't bother looting it. Which on that note, as you're building your character, if you want to make good money in Starfield, one of the easy ways to do it is just take one of the faction traits. These traits make it so you get more money while doing quests for that faction, and each faction has a full-scale quest line. Most of the money I made in Starfield came from questing, and with the United Colonies trait, I was getting nearly 10,000 credits per quest with almost no downsides. Like technically you do get greater bounties with other factions, but it barely ever happened, so it was not an issue, and plus I was rich enough to pay off the bounties even if I did get them. But yeah, these faction traits are probably one of the best sleeper ways to make a bunch of extra money in Starfield. As well as one of the single most valuable tips I have for you overall is ship storage. Your spaceship in Starfield has a giant cargo hold, and you could store things in it. You could actually store whatever you want in it. You're able to access this via the ship menu. So just go to the ship part of your main menu, and then you could easily access the cargo hold. And technically, you don't even need to be on your spaceship to use this. As long as you're nearby your ship, you could transfer things in or out of the cargo hold. Specifically, storing resources or loot you want to sell is incredibly handy here. Resources that are stored in your ship's cargo hold will be accessible by all of the crafting tables in the game, and that isn't true for companion inventory, so this is truly powerful and lucrative. As well as at any of the various vendors in the game, you can access your ship's inventory to sell things if you want. And considering the fact that you could customize ships to have more cargo, and you could actually do this relatively cheaply even early on into the game, you can very quickly have a giant movable storage device that you take everywhere with you. The Lodge is the main base of Constellation. It's a place you're going to go right at the start of the game. It has its own fast travel point, making it incredibly handy, especially because in the basement of the lodge, which you can get to right from this door next to the entrance, there's one copy of every single crafting table in the game. Honestly, through my 100 hours in Starfield, I almost never made crafting tables because it was just much easier to use these. There's a fast travel point right here, and a couple of load screens later, you have every crafting table easily at your disposal. Skills are incredibly important in Starfield, and something you'll notice right as you jump into the game is some abilities are not available until you unlock the skill for them. Jetpacks are one of the biggest ones here. You're not able to use a jetpack without the appropriate skill, so this is likely something you'll want to grab early on. But other basic features of past games like sneak attacks or even a stealth meter are also locked behind skills. Or even pickpocketing is only available after you have the right skill for it. So early on, I would recommend grabbing a few of these as opposed to just some of these stat boosting skills, and just make sure you read around a lot. Skills in Starfield are a lot more intense and a lot more valuable compared to past games. So being careful as to where you spend your skill points is imperative here. And another skill I highly recommend getting, especially early on, that isn't super obvious is fitness. It's going to increase your stamina in Starfield, and believe me, you're going to want this. Starfield has this problem where a lot of times you land on a planet and you're actually pretty far away from whatever it is you're looking for. So the quest may take 5 minutes to complete, but 4 of those minutes are just you running to the quest objective. And trust me, this happens all the time throughout the game. You do a lot of running here. Honestly, it's probably the most running I've ever done in a Bethesda game. This can get pretty tedious, but it's made a lot better when you do have more stamina, which is basically going to be your oxygen meter in Starfield. As well as jetpacks can be super handy here as well. The jetpack meter is separate from your stamina meter. So if gravity is low enough, you can fly forever as a faster means of travel. Or even on some planets, just switch between using your jetpack and running on foot as your stamina bar depletes. But something that's very important to note is there are 4 distinct kinds of jetpack in Starfield, and some of these jetpacks just suck, while some of the other ones are incredibly fun and great. As you get a jetpack, or boost pack as it's known in Starfield, you'll pretty easily be able to see which type it is. The basic boost pack is pretty bad as it barely gives you any lift, doesn't even really feel like you're getting jetted into the sky at all. And honestly, the skip boost pack, which is a bit more advanced, is kind of the same problem. Unless you're using this one on a low gravity planet, it really doesn't elevate you into the sky at all, so it doesn't do much. It just really isn't that useful. So if you notice your boost pack stinks, it may be a basic or a skip pack. Conversely, the balanced boost pack provides you with a nice degree of lift as well as a good amount of forward momentum, as well as the power boost pack just flings you into the air at maximum capacity, which can be super valuable. I actually use this one a lot through gameplay because it makes it really nice in combat encounters where you have to escape quickly. You use your jetpack and you're just flung so high in the air that most enemies start missing, or they can't even hit you if they're melee. And on low gravity planets, both the balanced and powered jetpacks are incredible. I had so much fun messing around with these in Starfield, but I bring this up because relatively early on into the game, you'll probably find one of each variant of these boost packs, and just take note as it's probably a good idea to save the variant you prefer the most, because yeah, you're going to use your jetpack all the time in Starfield. Digi Picking is going to be the new lockpicking and hacking mechanic. Now they're just one in Starfield, and oh boy, did I spend some time using this mechanic. There are a ton of locks in this game, but I do have some essential tips on how to make this far more forgiving. The picking itself is fairly straightforward. You basically fill the holes with your pick, so you want to make this a complete circle over time. And right off the bat, if you're somebody who is lockpicking a lot in past Bethesda games, buy Digipicks every single time you go to the vendor. Unlike past games, with Digipicks in Starfield, as you use one, you lose it. So it's an active use item. If you are picking a lock, you just used and consumed that Digipick. You'll have one less after, which means you're going to burn through these things incredibly fast. And on numerous missions, I wanted to lockpick something, but I just ran out of picks. Again, it was happening constantly. So early on into the game, anytime you see one of these at a vendor, I recommend picking one up because you will definitely want it. Plus, you just get showered with money as you do the quests in Starfield, so you will be able to afford it even if they are 500 credits each. And to make the entire picking process a bit simpler, you can actually move multiple picks at once. So you could basically orientate the first one, and then before you apply it, orientate a second one to see if things will line up and the circle overall will be filled. Typically, I wouldn't apply any picks until I figured out the entire puzzle, because even though there is an undo button, hitting undo will actually consume one of your picks, which, like I just mentioned, are pretty valuable. As well as getting level 2 of the security skill early on can be very handy. When you have level 2 of the skill, the picks will be highlighted blue if they fit in the lock. So just at a glance, the game will tell you, okay, yes, this is one of the viable options. It honestly saves you a ton of time and genuinely probably saved me several headaches across my playthrough. But also be warned, because this system can trick you. Just because the pick fits doesn't mean it's the right choice. There were plenty of times in Starfield where I got down to the last ring and realized, oh no, the picks I have left won't actually pick this lock successfully. And specifically when you just have the singular picks, be careful. My main tip would just basically be to always try and use the largest pick available as you get into lock picking, and over time gradually get to the smaller ones. So start off with a 3 or 4 slot pick, and if those don't work, only then start using the 2 or 1 slots. And something else that should hopefully just save you a ton of time is fast traveling. In Starfield, as long as there are no enemies around and your ship isn't docked somewhere, you can probably fast travel. So for example, even as I am on this planet in the middle of nowhere, I can just open up my map and fast travel directly back to the lodge, and it'll place me right outside of it. This avoids several load screens with going back to your ship, jumping there, having to go through the scan process, and then finally landing at Constellation. And you can even fast travel from interior locations, like here. I can jump to a completely different system, and even once I arrive, I don't even have to open the planetary map for this planet if I don't want to. As you're facing a planet, simply hit E on PC or A on consoles, and it'll highlight that planet and give you a quick option to open the planetary map and pick your desired landing location. You can even do this on distant quest markers while in space, and you'll be able to jump directly to wherever that quest is. Very quickly, you'll realize Starfield has a ton of just bopping around from one planet or one system to another, and cutting down the middle time of fast traveling and load screens as much as possible will make the game a lot more fun, trust me. If you're doing the main quest in Starfield, you will always need a cutter. That's that mining tool you'll get right at the start of the game. It's classified as a weapon and you are able to drop it, but if you show up to an artifact without one, you won't be able to progress that quest. You have to basically always carry this on you, which although annoying, is not nearly as annoying as running back to your ship because you forgot one. Unfortunately, in Starfield, you're not able to find new landing locations on planets just by stumbling upon them, at least from what I can tell. So some planets in Starfield are going to have landing spots that you can unlock. Like for example, here I have the Empire State Building on Earth. Unfortunately, you can't just land here and find it. I tried landing in this area on Earth and I would run around in circles, but no, you can't actually discover these that way. Instead, you're gonna have to either get them from a quest, a book, or just an NPC telling you about them. So when you open up a planet, the landing spots you currently have available are all you have available. It's not like you running around this planet is going to discover a bunch of additional ones. You'll still find something while you run around planets, but a lot of this is the overhauled random encounter system. Things randomly placed on the planet by Bethesda, not actual quest or notable locations. In Starfield, you're able to bind alternative keys for most of the actions in the game. Some actions even have alternate keys bound by default. And this is just one of those super handy accessibility features that I'm sure a lot of people won't notice right off the bat. As well as more so than in past games, activities in Starfield will lead to proper quests. As you play this game, and really as you go through some of the major cities, you'll notice that a ton of activities like talk to X person will actually end up leading to a full-scale quest or even quest line. Some of the most fun quest lines are found this way. In past games, a lot of times these would just be minor or forgettable quests, but no, in Starfield, these can lead to major things, so don't ignore them. But those are some of my big tips I have right now for you with Starfield. If you enjoyed this video, get subscribed. I'm gonna have a ton more Starfield content coming, but until then, if you missed my full Starfield review, you can check that out here.